Alright, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from Ham on Beats! Checking out more of these fun fact videos. You guys know how it goes. If I see spoilers for stuff I am not aware of, I will be skipping it. But yeah, you guys seem to think I should be okay watching these up to a certain point. So we're going to do JoJo Fun Facts number 3, and then I'll just keep checking them out, because I love me some JoJo's content, and Ham on Beats very good at putting it all together and teaching us stuff about JoJo's.
She's up there! Ham on the beat!
Welcome back to another set of JoJo Fun Facts. In the previous two videos, I went over a variety of lesser-known JoJo trivia. So this time we'll be doing just that, and I think I've included a lot of interesting things this time around. The first bit of trivia involves a change that was made to Part 1.
Oh?
In the original version of the story that was published in Weekly Shonen Jump, there was a line from Will Zeppeli where he says that he didn't marry or have any children. However, when Part 2 rolled around soon after, this was contradicted by showing that he had a son and eventually grandchildren.
Okay.
In subsequent releases, this mistake was corrected, and he now says that he gave up his family to pursue the Stone Mask. This change also came with a written apology from Araki, which said, "Adults aren't liars, they just make mistakes." Here's one that isn't directly related to JoJo, but instead to one of Araki's old manga, Outlaw Man.
Okay.
This was a one-chapter story in an Old West setting, similar to his first published work, Poker Under Arms. Something I always noticed about it was that the scans you find online are in way worse quality than his other manga. However, there's actually a reason for this. After its original magazine release, the chapter was published in the Gorgeous Irene volume alongside Araki's other one-shots. Here it includes a note that explains the situation. It says that while Shueisha was moving between buildings, the original Outlaw Man manuscript was actually lost. So for the volume release, they had to scan from the magazine itself, so the quality is much worse than the other chapters in the volume.
Oh god, that is awkward.
However, I'm definitely thankful they still did this,
No, that's still cool, they still went ahead.
since otherwise it would be lost media. At the end of Part 2, we get the first appearance of Joseph's Walkman, something that became a staple to the endings of parts that feature him. In the original Weekly Shonen Jump ending of Part 2, he directly mentions that he's listening to Get Back by the Beatles. In the volume release, he no longer says this, although you can still see that the tape says the Beatles. At the end of Part 3, you can also see that he's listening to Get Back. Some of you may already be familiar with the early days of JoJo's English localization. The first JoJo manga to be published in English was actually a paperback release of Stardust Crusaders. This was likely due to the fact that Americans might only recognize JoJo from the fighting game Heritage for the Future, so the first two parts of the manga were skipped over. However, something that exists only in this English version is a prologue chapter meant to catch readers up on what happened before. At the beginning of the first volume, there's a series of panels explaining the events and characters of Part 1.
Alright.
Part 2 doesn't get the same treatment, although it isn't as essential to the story of Part 3 as Phantom Blood is. The JoJo fighting game Heritage for the Future includes a variety of characters from Stardust Crusaders, including some of the more minor ones. One of the more strange inclusions is Midler, the user of the stand High Priestess. In the original manga, Midler never actually makes a full appearance. She was only seen knocked out in the distance after she was defeated.
Right.
So for the game, Araki was approached to create a new design for the character. They requested he make her into something like a belly dancer. In the game itself, some of Midler's sprites are largely based on panels of Yukiko from Part 4. Some of her dialogue is also borrowed from Mariah. After the game's release, the design Araki made for Midler stuck, and in the JoJo A Go-Go art book he also draws her with this design.
Pretty cool.
Later, when Part 3 received its colored version, Midler was given the same color scheme as her fighting game appearance,
So that's how she got. Right, okay.
although her design is not changed. Here's one more small Midler-related fact. In the original Weekly Shonen Jump release of Chapter 86 of Stardust Crusaders, Midler's name is actually written as Shidler. As a lot of you may know, near the end of Part 3, during the scene of Wilson Phillips running over the pedestrians, the character Waldo from the children's book series Where's Waldo can be spotted. This
I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
wasn't included in the anime, since it omits the scene of this happening.
Yeah, 'cause I'm anime only, so that's very... That's so random.
Only showing what happens before and
Unless he is there, no one's been able to find him yet.
After. Something you may not know is that in the original release of this chapter, that issue of Shonen Jump featured a poster titled the Spot the Hero Quiz. It's an illustration similar to Where's Waldo containing multiple Shonen Jump protagonists, including Jotaro. Before the JoJo anime we know today, Stardust Crusaders had a shorter OVA adaptation, covering some of the main fights from throughout that part. The first OVA from 1990.
I think I tried watching this back in the day and was like, I just don't get this.
3 actually starts with the fight against Indul in Egypt and moves on to the final battle over the course of 6 episodes. Later in 2000, a second set of OVAs was released that adapted the first half of Part 3. However, something that is quite noticeable is the switch from cell animation to digital, giving the 2000 OVA a much different look. But what some may not know is that they apparently intended to animate the 2000 OVA in cell at some point. In the behind-the-scenes VHS tape, we can see footage of a cell-animated version of the first episode, which was later converted to digital in the final release. One JoJo attraction some may not know about is the Universal Studios Japan ride JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: The Real 4D. It featured a CG animated video that portrayed the final battle between Jotaro and Dio in Part 3. It was held from June 30th to October 1st of 2017, exclusively in Universal Studios Japan. Since it's also a 4D attraction, the audience feels things such as the wind during stand clashes and apparently feels the sensation of time being stopped. The story puts the audience in the role of a Speedwagon Foundation agent providing backup for Jotaro. The beginning of the attraction features Joseph talking directly to the audience about the backstory of Dio and what's going on right now. The agent is then equipped with a jetpack, a UV light rifle, and a set of goggles that allows them to see stands. They can also use these goggles to see from Jotaro's perspective, which happens multiple times throughout the show. The way the fight plays out has a variety of differences from the source material. First is of course the presence of the Speedwagon agents, which didn't happen originally. However, some other key moments are changed, such as when Dio was prepared to decapitate Jotaro with the sign. Instead of Polnareff coming to distract Dio, the Speedwagon agent does it with their UV rifle. This results in Dio coming to kill them until Jotaro gets up and saves them. Joseph also appears to be already healed since he's bandaged up and speaking to the agent through their goggles. And after the final clash between Jotaro and Dio, the agent finishes Dio off with the rifle. The show ends with Jotaro and Star Platinum congratulating the agent by giving them a thumbs up.
Oh, mate, that's so
The attraction
cool.
also featured a collection of merchandise, such as an Iggy plush, a towel that looks like Jotaro's jacket, and a set of jewelry.
Cool.
In the 2018 movie Mamma Mia! Here We Go Again, during a scene set in Tokyo, a billboard advertising the Stardust Crusaders anime can be seen in the background. The Stardust Crusaders anime's first ending sequence, Walk Like an Egyptian, actually had a mistake at first. When the ending first played in episodes 3 and 4 of the anime, Avdol was actually drawn with 2 right hands. In episode 5, this was corrected, thankfully avoiding any confusion that would come up from Polnareff mentioning his search for Jay Guile. Here's another interesting bit of trivia. In July of 2004, Araki appeared in an interview alongside American filmmaker Sam Raimi in an issue of the Japanese edition of Playboy magazine. The main subject of their conversation was the release of Spider-Man 2, which Araki says that he preferred over the original. Araki also shows that he's a big fan of Raimi's other films, like Evil Dead and Darkman, and says that his films have a big influence on his work. Raimi also compliments Araki's work. He praises Araki's eye for details and says that his framing in particular is fantastic. They also mentioned the future Spider-Man 3, with Raimi jokingly asking Araki if he could give him any ideas for it. If you're familiar with the JoJo series, it's likely that you've seen this symbol of a hand before. It's present across many of Araki's illustrations, and it's almost impossible to find a bit of JoJo media that doesn't feature it in some way. You may have also seen this phrase, Lucky Land, repeatedly across the series. These are actually references to Araki's personal company, Lucky Land Communications. The hand is the company's logo, and it's meant to represent the callus that manga artists get on their hand from holding a pen.
That's cool.
Like I mentioned before, references to the company appear all over the series. Jotaro's iconic hat has a badge showing the hand, and Josuke has been seen with it on his badges as well. The Lucky Land name also appears in Part 4 as the name of the milk company that Angelo was posing as an employee of. Koichi was also seen wearing a shirt with the phrase. One additional bit of trivia is a possible mistake in the manga. During one panel, Koichi's shirt says Lackey Land instead of Lucky Land. In the last video, I went over some of JoJo's influence on the video game Dark Souls. There I mentioned the 77 Rings challenge from Phantom Blood influencing the Armor of Thorns, as well as the name shared between the Tarkus that appears in both JoJo and Dark Souls. But there's actually a few more references to go over. In the files of Dark Souls 2, it was discovered that many enemies have Japanese reference names. The Executioner's Chariot boss is referred to in the files as Silver Chariot, referencing the stand of the same name. The Dark Lurker boss is also referred to as Agadine's Stand, referencing the concept of stands in the series.
Cool.
This also may be alluding to a bit of cut content that connects Dark Lurker to the character Grave Warden Agadine, and it may have acted similarly to a stand ability for him earlier in development. In Dark Souls 3, the boss High Lord Wolnir looks very similar to the stand Justice from Part 3.
Very much so.
It also breathes out fog as one of its attacks, which is similar to Justice's ability. In FromSoftware's most recent game, Elden Ring, there is a character known as Enya the Finger Reader. She has a similar name and design to Enya the Hag, who has been featured throughout the series since Part 3. One funny coincidence is that 3 of the voice actors for the main characters in the anime adaptation share the same last name. The actor for Jotaro is Daisuke Ono, the actor for Josuke is Yuki Ono, and the actor for Giorno is Kensho Ono. During an event celebrating the debut of Part 5's anime, the voice actor for Joseph, Tomokazu Sugita, poked fun at this coincidence by jokingly referring to himself as Tomokazu Ono. As a lot of people may know, there was a PS2 beat-em-up game adapting Part 5's story that released in 2002. It goes over most of the major fights, but a lot did end up getting cut out, like the fights with Sale and Zucchero, Milone, Tiziano and Squalo, and Risotto. However, some of these are still shown in some form in the game through the Story Dramas feature. One character that was completely cut from the story though is Koichi, who was featured prominently in the beginning of Part 5's manga. Something that's interesting though is that early trailers and screenshots of the game actually show that he was intended to be included at some point. However, for whatever reason, he isn't present in the final game. Some pieces of him do remain though. In the airplane level during the fight with Notorious B.I.G., the model for Koichi's luggage can be found as an Easter egg. In the game's files, there's also an unused model for a girl that would have appeared during Giorno and Koichi's fight. Mista's design in Part 5 remains extremely memorable, in part due to his strange zebra-striped pants. But based on a statement from Araki, this might not be just for decoration. In the Feel in JoJo interview from February of 1998, Araki is asked which Passione member spends the most money on their clothes. He says it's Mista. Cool. His sweater is cashmere, and his pants are zebra-striped leather, suspected of breaking the Washington Convention.
Wow, I love random little bits like that, like it just adds to the characters.
This refers to a multilateral treaty signed for the protection of endangered species, implying that Mista's pants really were made from a zebra. On May 18th of 2019, the 30th episode of Part 5's anime released. For English audiences, it was released through Crunchyroll. However, there was some kind of mix-up, and instead of the normal subtitles, the episode was actually given the subtitles from an episode of the 2019 reboot of Fruits Basket.
What? So it had subtitles from a completely different show?
This mistake resulted in a variety of humorous screenshots due to the misplaced subtitles. One of the most memorable moments from the last arcs of Part 5 was the extended beatdown Giorno lays on Cioccolata.
Yes.
However, what you may not know is that this was originally shorter. The volume release of this chapter added a new 2-page spread, bringing the total page count of the beatdown from 6 to 8. Speaking of Cioccolata, he was actually given a brief mention in the Thus Spoke Kushibe Rohan TV drama. In its second episode, Kushagara, his name appears on a book titled Cioccolata's Operative Orthopedics. In the art book JoJo A Go-Go, a count was shown of which stands appeared the most across the series. The book counts up to the end of Part 5 and shows that Sex Pistols appeared the most in the series in 385 panels. Silver Chariot came in second at 367 panels, and Star Platinum in third at 351 panels.
Ain't that interesting? Side characters stands, but then the Sex Pistols one is a lot easier to use in it because it's multiple little bullets going around all over the place. Like, it's more easier to use all over the place. Serial Chariot, okay, and then Star Platinum's 3.
However, Star Platinum would overtake this record with its appearances in Part 6, making it the current stand with the most appearances at 398 panels. In the French edition of Stone Ocean's 15th volume, there was a major typographical error in the summary pages. Instead of properly listing out the names of the characters, Weather Report is referred to as Foo Fighters, Hermes is referred to as Emporio, Versus is referred to as Poochie, and Poochie is referred to as the Green Baby. What appears to have happened here is that they mistakenly used the text from the 11th volume summary pages, which features those characters in this order. The Italian version of the manga is home to some interesting changes. Oftentimes we see that the romanization of names or terms in JoJo is inconsistent with how the translations interpret it. This leads to a lot of confusion sometimes. First, a translation will choose a certain way to spell something, but then later the manga itself features its own different way of spelling it, leading to somewhat of a disconnect. In order to stay consistent with the way they localize these, the Italian version actually makes some edits to the art itself. For one example, Jolene's name is actually edited in the Italian version to show the more traditional spelling of Cujo that we would expect. In Part 8, Ojiro's name on the Volume 22 preview is edited to reflect how it was spelled earlier in the manga. The spelling of Lokakaka that was featured near the end of Part 8 was also redrawn to say Rokakaka, as it had been romanized in the translation earlier. One more change that was made for consistency is Kei Nijimura's name. Early on in the manga, Kei's name was accidentally listed as Kyo.
It's not really spoiling anything for me at the moment, so we'll stay.
And this went unnoticed until she made her return near the end of the story. Since they had already used Kyo as her name in the Italian version, they avoided using the proper name once it was corrected and keep using Kyo for consistency. In the last video I mentioned the Steel Ball Run promotional website, which featured original music that was re-released later. However, the history of the creator of this music goes a bit deeper than I originally went into. The creator of the animations was actually the same one who made the music. He became a popular creator on the internet for making flash animated parodies of Golgo 13 titled Gonorego. Some of these are visible on Poyama's channel alongside the Soul Beat replica music videos. At some point he was approached by Shueisha to produce the animations and music used for the website. Since then, he has still had more involvement with JoJo, since according to a tweet from Poyama in 2015, he was in charge of creating the official trailer to announce JoJolian's color scans. For the last bit of trivia, I want to point out something people may not know about the final pages in each part. When a part first releases, it usually doesn't include the final page that people remember. They mostly have ended up getting an extra final page when it released as a volume. Some even got these extra pages in the smaller format Bunko release from years later. I saved this one for last since it obviously spoils the final pages of each part. So if you want to move on to the conclusion of the video, skip to the timestamp on screen. For part 1, the original ended with the page of Ariana and all the faces in the sky, while the 2002 Bunko version later added an extra spread of her in the coffin. For these endings, you can really tell the difference between Araki's styles across the 15-year gap. The same is true for part 2, which in 2002 added an extra spread of Joseph's plane flying over the ocean. In part 3, the original ended with the surviving members walking away at the airport, but the final version from a few months later adds one more page showing the plane heading home. Part 4 originally ended with Josuke's final pose, while the 2004 re-release added a final shot of Morio.
Which I think is great, because part 4 is about Morio, though, isn't it?
Part 6 made the largest changes to its ending. Originally, Poochie's defeat transitioned immediately into Emporio on the side of the road. The volume version that came out shortly after adds an extra page in between showing the universe reforming. The original manga ended on the page of Weather being picked up. but this version is actually what added the final spread of the main characters' faces.
Which I thought was cool, and then didn't they add one in the anime? Foo Fighters, wasn't it? Yeah? Yeah.
Part 7...
Yep. There we go. Sorry. We're covering the endings of things. I'm just like, but cool. So I am enjoying these fun facts videos. I'll just carry on with them. I think there's like 7 of them or something. So like every other few days or something, go through them because yeah, why not? Love it. Thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, I want to be able to watch Patreon-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series. Links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is the last help support channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? You guys, click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss some future videos. So guys, next time.